RenderForce.com.
Hello everybody and welcome to my review of Patty Jenkins' new film and DCEU's newest installment, Wonder Woman. Now, this movie impressed me on several different levels, and one of the first levels that really impressed me on is how simple it was. The director decided to keep the concept and plot of this movie very simple and easy to follow. And that's something that is rare to see nowadays in film. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, but in this case it was very effective, which really surprised me. The simple films often are the most effective, and this was one of the best examples of that. So I loved how simple this film was. It was really easy to follow, and you can probably take younger kids to it too, because of how easy the plot is to follow. I'll be honest, as I started to watch this movie, I got a little bit nervous in the beginning, because some of the movie just felt like things were happening. And it kind of started to remind me of Suicide Squad, so I was a little bit wary going in as the movie progressed. So I'm going to talk about that first opening act that got me a little bit wary. So the thing that got me nervous about this movie, it was in the first act, and then specifically the screenplay of the first act, because it kind of started to resemble Suicide Squad's first act, in that we were given some expository material, and after that things just started happening that seemed unrelated, and the juxtaposition of those two things just wasn't making sense to me. It reminded me of a lot about Suicide Squad, where we got lots of exposition and something happens and it feels very like a big stark contrast, and that's something that got me nervous going into the first act. I was like, was the hype really worth it for Wonder Woman? But thankfully the movie does really pick up after that first act. And I know a lot of people online have been saying that the first act was actually their favorite part of the film, and I do agree that the picturization and how the shots were done and how the setting of that first act looks really good, and there was a lot of good potential for it, but just the fact that there was a bunch of exposition and then some action that seemed unrelated really was an offsetting thing for me for this movie. But eventually it does pick up, and I won't say that the first act was necessarily a problem, because you needed the expository material to just get done with it, because you needed to understand the rest of the movie, and it would be very difficult to integrate it later on, seeing the movie as a whole, that is. As for the seemingly unrelated things that started happening, they do end up create some connection. And so when you see the movie as a whole, I think you'll realize that, even though it seems stark or weird at the time, the movie does connect those loose ends together. So I like that. But man, does this movie pick up after that. There were some amazing action sequences in this film to begin with. Patty Jenkins really knows how to make use of slow-mo, and that really elevated this movie up for me. And it never felt cheesy. It was almost risque. It almost could have felt cheesy, but Patty Jenkins knew how to just integrate enough gritty and grounded fighting in this film to make even cheesy sequences feel real. And not just that, but one of the biggest factors that made these action sequences feel real, feel grounded despite being potentially cheesy, were Gal Gadot's actions. So let's just talk about Wonder Woman herself, Gal Gadot. Let's just get it out of the way. Gal Gadot was amazing in this movie from an acting standpoint, and I never saw this coming from her side. And there were a lot of critics when the trailer came out and everything, and people were like, Gal Gadot might not be able to pull off Wonder Woman, but she pulls it off perfectly. In fact, she was basically born to be this character. She fit into the shoes of Wonder Woman so well that there were times in this film I forgot I was watching an actor. It felt like a real superhero. And Gal Gadot, not only was she stellar in making those action sequences feel fierce and gritty and grounded, but in the smaller emotional scenes, she was so perfect that if I were a Hollywood executive, I would look at casting Gal Gadot in lots of other different things. She has really good acting potential. I did not see it coming. I see it now. And she was amazing in this movie, guys. She was able to handle both the action sequences, the emotional sequences, and just pack a straight punch, and hats off to her, because no one saw it coming. So excellent work from her, and I'm excited to see her in this Wonder Woman in upcoming DCEU installments. In general, the characters in this movie were really well realized, and they had arches to them. Each character had something that he had to basically contribute and to add to the story, which really helped the movie move along a lot faster than its running time shows it to be, which is 2 hours 21 minutes. But because you were invested in each and every one of the characters, and specifically in Diana, aka Wonder Woman, the film felt light on its feet because you really wanted to know what would happen to each and every character, even the side characters you were interested, the villains you were interested. So I like that about Wonder Woman, is that the director and the script really put in time to making sure that each character was well realized. So hats off to the screenwriters and hats off to the director for making sure that despite creating action sequences, also having time to build characters. And that's one of the most important things in this film, is that they were able to put in really grounded, well-realized characters. So I really enjoyed the characters' performance, the characters in this film. For example, you have Chris Pine, playing this military officer in this film, this military captain, and I was nervous about his character seeing the trailers because we felt like he'd be a disposable character. But he contributed a lot to this movie, and I felt like he gave a really good performance and really justified the necessity of his character. And that's something I really enjoyed, is Chris Pine's performance as well, especially his chemistry with Gal Gadot, because you don't really think of Gal Gadot and Chris Pine as having any sort of chemistry, just as actors thinking about them, but they really pulled it off, and they pulled it off really well. So hats off to both of them too for pulling off not only their respective roles, but also creating chemistry or bond between each other. So that was really nice. Without getting into any spoilers, I just want to talk about the villain in this movie. And I think you could argue that he was not the best actor for playing that villain. But I think the actor who plays the villain really did pull it off. And I'm talking about the main villain here, so when you go see it, you know who I'm talking about. I think he was good, the actor who played it, and as a character, his motivations are a little murky, but I think he pulled it off. And it was the kind of bad guy where it's such a classic bad guy material that it kind of might feel worn out to some viewers, but for me, what made it refreshing was how Gal Gadot, or aka Wonder Woman, responded to it. Basically, Gal Gadot ruled the movie, and even in its weakest times, she was able to just bring it back up. So that's the really only qualm I have with the movie, but just because Gal Gadot was there, really everything else became nullified, and she gave such a great performance, and that basically almost all the weak points of this movie were kind of settled down. Guys, I found myself clapping at the end of Wonder Woman because I was so glad that we finally had a classic superhero film that actually presented very well realized characters without having 15 different movies to set them up, and also was able to create exhilarating action sequences. I mean, this was a big populist cinema kind of film. I enjoyed it. I think it has very good characters. It's a strong female character at the center of it, and they're enjoyable action sequences, and the plot is pretty good. So I will give this movie an A- for being effective in all those things, despite being very simple. So that's all I have for Wonder Woman, guys. So be sure to leave a thumbs up on this video, guys, and like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. I also recently saw a horror movie, Lights Out, which came out in 2016. Hope to have a review up for that soon. I have done a bunch of new trailer reviews. I did one for Paddington 2 and the Tequila trailer for Baby Driver, so be sure to check those out soon. Hope to have some other trailers that I missed, have reviews for those too. So thank you guys for watching.